All right, do me a favor. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of this term, Mexican repatriation. Just like I thought, nobody. Now, a lot of y'all have seen this viral video. It's this guy from Chicago, he's at the airport and he's being sent home. It's very emotional and it's gonna pull at your heart for real. Because this guy had been here, I think since he was about 10 or so. So it was not his decision to come here. He was brought here by his parents. So America is his home. Chicago was his home. But unfortunately, because of the current administration, the president, his rhetoric, his actions, his xenophobia, he's decided to round up people, right, who he has portrayed as rapists and criminals to send them back home. Now we're outraged, and we should be, because if we are so-called Americans, we understand that most people here are immigrants, right? The same people who stigmatize the immigrants who come here for a better life come from a lineage of people who came here for a better life. Now, my ancestors, completely different, right? We were forced to come here, but we ain't talking about that right now. So, we should be outraged about that situation. We should be motivated to change it. But I'm here to let you know, this is not the first time something like this has happened. This happened quite frequently in American history. Matter of fact, we don't even have to go back 100 years to revisit this, because we know Trump is a xenophobic, we know he's racist, he's sexist, he's all these just colorful words and adjectives. But he's not the worst one. Matter of fact, if we go back to Herbert Hoover, we can talk about Mexican repatriation. So let's go back to that time period real quick. So, matter of fact, let's go to World War I. We have soldiers at war. We have fields that need to be worked on. So America invites Mexican migrants to come work here during the late 1910s and the 1920s. Then the economy, it's a big downfall, right? Stock market crashes, banks don't have enough money, and we endure the Great Depression. Now, we know how this thing works out. Whenever there's an economic issue going on, who do we blame? Not the people up top, not the oligarchs, no, not the wealthy businessmen, the greedy, avaricious businessmen. We blame the people at the bottom just trying to make a living. So the government said, yo, we have to send those Mexicans back because they're taking all your jobs. So what did they do? They started to round up millions of Mexican citizens and migrants during the 30s, during the Great Depression, to send them back home. 60% of these people were American citizens. So they were born in America. They didn't know anything else, but they were forced to go back to make jobs for white Americans. How did that work out? Didn't work out too well. See, the government and people in power do a great job of dividing us, and they've done that for a long time. See, what happens is they make a lot of money. They're cashing out. They make billions. Even back then in the 30s, people like Henry Ford or whatever, people like John D. Rockefeller. But instead of taking a pay cut and providing for more people, they just lay off a bunch of workers and say, that's your competition right there. Get rid of them. Mexican repatriation happened under Herbert Hoover, a president a lot of people didn't like because they felt it was his fault for the Great Depression, and that's debatable. But it also happened under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, one of the most beloved presidents. So let's understand that it ain't just Trump. It happens a lot throughout American history. And it hasn't even been 100 years like I said. So the whole point of this is, I just taught about this lesson this past week. We have to realize that history keeps repeating itself. That's not even a lifetime ago. And we're so outraged because we don't realize it's happened before. We don't have the context. Now with this context, now with this information, we become empowered and we're not surprised. We're upset. But it should mean we put more pressure on the government to live up to its standards of excellence in providing for all people. That's just my opinion. I mean, we can have a whole nother discussion on how when these Mexican migrants came over here, they were often stripped down and sprayed with a lot of, toxic fumes to cleanse them. Matter of fact, there's an excerpt even in Hitler's book where he talks about how he likes and he admired how America was able to make this homogeneous society that was just for white Americans during this time, right? Like, there are accounts of people who were sent back home, and on the way back home, they had to be sprayed and cleansed because they did not want them to contaminate animals. This is the American system we've lived under for a long time, y'all. So again, don't be surprised. Be upset, but let's work towards creating some type of action. Put pressure on those in power. So in another 80 years, we're not talking about the same issues again. So, how many of y'all have heard of Mexican repatriation? Nice.